right, we're good to go. So hello, everyone. I'm with the lovely, hilarious Miss Tiawana Brown.
She picked up on that fast.
She's had me rolling since I met you. I mean, you had me rolling, but
water in the glass.
Yes, water's in the glass.
Don't start telling no lies.
Yes, because
listen, no rumors.
We're gonna be talking a lot, so I already feel we need a lot of water. So, this is Candace Moffitt, the minister and therapist, and we are here on the call with Miss Tiawana Brown.
So, minister and therapist.
Yes.
I need both of those in my life.
Oh,
so
listen, it's
so
gonna
much.
come all full circle in this interview.
I like it. I love it. You're so beautiful.
She's had me rolling. I'm telling you, this is gonna be amazing. So I'm excited. You guys are in for a treat today. I'm just excited to hear the story, your story of coming from the bottom to the top. You know, I think people really truly need to hear that, because people feel like once, you know, they've done something or gone to prison or made a mistake that it's over, but it's not over. You're living witness and living proof.
See, I know how to love because I came from love.
Right.
So as a little girl, I was always loved. I remember the love from my mom. I remember the love from my grandmother. I remember the love from all my aunts. And I come from a long line of strong, influential black women.
And you can tell.
My cousins, all my mom's friends. Listen, my mom, you know, my mom was in a gang. She really was in a gang. My mom didn't play back in the day. She really didn't. We're talking about the 70s, right? I was born in the 70s. My mom was a fox and still is a fox. And was a fashionista, and that's where we got it from. But, you know, overcoming the stigmas of your neighborhood, being born on the 1500 block of West Boulevard, you know, where my grandparents lived at, that was the safe home. Southside Homes housing projects is still standing today. And so, you know, the little girl was loved, highly loved. And my mom had all the bows in my hair. I was PAL cheerleader, PAL, I know Police Athletic Association, Little League, a lot of people don't know what that's in church. On the usher board, dance. That's why my foundation is what it is. It's immeasurable and unshakable. Right? Woo! You know, and so that's who the little girl is. The little girl grew up in church. So the little girl strayed, and we'll get into that. The little girl strayed away with, you know, some trauma of my childhood and some things that I went through. But as a little girl, I was loved immensely. There are pictures of me and my mom going and take the single shots when it was just me and my mom. And then when my sister was born, it was my little sister. Like I said, I was a little girl for 7.5 years by myself. And so I was spoiled. And I can remember that love that my mama implemented in me. And even when my little sister came along, just, you know, going to all of the events, my mom showed up for everything that I was a part of. I grew up without a father by choice, but my father was in the military. My father was in the military. My father was a good man. My father have other children. But just for me, it's just, from my mother, it's just me and my daughter. But my father was in the military, and he was a good guy, and he was a nice looking guy. And he was a provider in his time, but he had multiple women. We just have a real conversation. So I didn't grow up with my father in my life, but as an adult, my dad's side of the family, and I know they're tuning in, they love me, and I love them. So, you know, I've grown. My dad family has a huge, huge presence in my life, and they're firecrackers for me. So I have a lot of love on my dad's side from my family.
And that's beautiful that you can take the honest truth of it, right? Take the honest truth of this is what it was at the time, but you take the positive from it. You take the positive from everything. It's like, you know, you're able to take that lemon and make lemonade.
And I had to get to that point.
It's a process, right?
It's a process.
Through learning in life. And
you know, and so we'll touch base, like, you know, I made headlines 6 weeks ago that wasn't so pleasant, depending on who you're asking, right? Because I've been through the fire already. You know, I got 10567-058. I got that 35 plus years ago. So when you do the justice work, when you travel the world fighting for women all over the world, when you travel the world fighting on Capitol Hill, when you have been at legislation in Raleigh and write policy every day at 600 East 4th Street, when I sit at the dais and I call people out, and I'm so real because life is so short and we don't have time to play. It's either you are about the people's business or get out the chair. The people put me in that chair. And so you heard the headlines, are you going to resign? why would I? Absolutely not. Not resigning from a position that was elected and I was chosen for the people, by the people, to do the people's work. So resignation and quitting has never been an option. In this lifetime. I'm 54. I'm 54, well seasoned and well developed. Right.
And there's so much passion when you talk. There's so much passion. There's a lot of councilwomen or politicians that don't always do what they say they're going to do. And so I believe that there's a story behind the passion. So let's kind of go into that. Like, what is your story behind the passion? You've been that person who's been incarcerated. You've been that person who made a mistake and you've corrected your life. So let's talk a little bit about, some of those mistakes and some of the things, the choices and everything.
Yeah, so it's a process, being a product of your environment, being born poor and in poverty, dating drug dealers, overcoming domestic violence, overcoming having my daughter in prison, handcuffed, shackled, going through all of that, wearing my braids in my hair, like Latifah, Queen Latifah. So when people come at me and say, you're going to prison or you're going to do this, it rolls off of me. Because when you are embedded in the law and you equipped with the armor of God, what people say doesn't matter to me. Now, it's not that I don't care, but it doesn't matter. There's a difference. I care, but it doesn't matter.
You've done that mental work.
And so I had to do the mental work in order to be where I am today. I never missed a beat. I kept right on going. The very day that happened and we came out of court, I was on the airplane going to Capitol Hill doing some work with some of the women that I do in Baltimore, Maryland. And, just the work that I do. But, making those mistakes, sometimes you don't even know you're making the mistakes. You're just trying to survive. You're doing the best you can with what you have. And so you're talking about 35 years ago. 35 years ago, let's see, I dated multiple drug dealers. I used my body with men to get the things that I wanted. Every event that people talk about, Freak Nick, that there's no longer exists, NBA All-Star Weekend, traveling to Cancun, Mexico, Bike Week, Daytona Beach. I've done it all. I've hung out with the celebrities, followed them around on their tour buses. Everything you can think of in life, I possibly have already done that. And so 5 years ago, I wasn't even thinking about politics. And when they asked me, this is my, so do you know that I ran one time against an incumbent and came within 300 votes of winning, but didn't win, so almost do not count. Almost don't count. And so I said I wasn't going to do it again. I wasn't going to run. But then the incumbent stepped up to a higher position and ran citywide. I moved, the seat was open. I ran, the attacks came then. They talked about my nonprofit. They attacked my organization. They attacked my background, the guy that I was running against, and I bear people their names in this interview for the sake of dignity, because I do have that, And so just making sure that people understand that it's not a game when you talk about how you survive in life and you meet people right where they at. The work that I do today, I can go hang out on the block with the guys that are selling drugs, carrying guns, shooting each other, telling them to put down the guns. The problem I have, though, when you tell somebody to put down the guns, what are you going to put in their hands? I can write policy, which I do every single day in my position. I can go in a boardroom, lead a boardroom. But the real joy for me, and I always say this, I am not better than anybody else, but I'm just as good as everybody else. But the everybody else's don't think that. And so you have to show them that. So not only do I talk it, but I walk it every single day. I know a lot of people thought, when you get in city council, are you going to change? How can you change something that's inside of your heart, that's inside of your blood? You're driven by God's grace and mercy, every single day. God paid the price for me. So when I get all the hate, when people saying, making comments about things that they don't know about, I laugh at them and I keep it moving. I keep it moving. I get to get on the boat, ride on the boat, as you saw yesterday. I have the best friends in my life, and so I have in my life. I get to pick and choose who's in my life. So when people walk out, they just can't go to the level where God has taken me. And as you say, I've started at the bottom. For me, I'm still at the bottom because every day is a day of grace. It's a day of mercy and just trying to reach and get to the next level. But I know that I'm doing something right because I know God, my God, the God that I serve, and I have a personal relationship, did not bring me from where he brought me to and brought me through to leave me with what I'm dealing with now. So I smile. And praise will confuse the enemy. Praise will confuse the enemy.
So listen, I'm envisioning that work, the work of, because people see you now. They see the glitz, the glam, the woman that has arrived, so to speak. That's what they see. That's what people look at, the numbers and all this, a councilwoman and all this. But before all of that, there was this process that you had to go through. So what was that process like when I talk about the call. God called you at some point. Sometimes God calls you in the prison cell. Sometimes he calls you in the car. Sometimes he calls you over your brother's house, your mama's house, in the bathroom. Like, where did God call you, or where did that work start with God?
That's a very good question, and I appreciate you asking me that. We're in sync with our colors today, too. Yes. Didn't even plan that. So I've been called a long time ago. I think I was called coming down the birth canal. That's deep, because
you're about to have me fall out.
I was called coming down the birth canal because the blueprints of our life, the specifications of our life, they're already designed before we get here.
Right.
You know, when God decides that my mom and my father were going to create Tiawana Brown, Tiawana Brown, they already knew what type of person I was going to be.
Right.
Everything is already, my mom is in the church every Sunday. Yeah. My aunt is a deacon. My aunts are deacons. They sing on the choir. We're members of Greater Mount Sinai Baptist Church, 1243 West Boulevard. But I do have some other pastors too. I got about 4 or 5 more pastors in this, and they know who they are, so I don't have to call their name. That I go to their churches and I'm fluent with them and they pray for me. Yeah. I have a community of people praying for me. Right. But nothing beats prayer. Prayer still works. Yeah. And I pity the fool that think that it does not. Because prayer does work, and it's immaculate, and exceedingly and in an abundance. So, covered in the blood from the crown to the soul, what can you say? Right. When you know who you are is one thing, but I know whose I am, and that's a different thing. To know who you are is one thing, but to know whose you are is a different thing. Right. So the process, I was going to commit suicide. People don't know that. Wow. Didn't want to live, coming home from incarceration, coming home where we don't have CDH, where we don't have safeguard, atone, validate, and educate. Right. We don't have just leadership. Yeah. We don't have the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. We don't have Susan Burton, A New Way of Life. All of these great organizations that are out here now, Forward Justice, and the list goes on and on and on. Formerly Incarcerated People's Movement. Like, there's just so many organizations now. Right. I found my tribe. Wow. And when I found my tribe, there is no stopping me or us. Right. That's it. So unstoppable. Yeah. I mean, I won't have to hit pause sometimes and slow down, but I'm unstoppable. Unstoppable. Unstoppable.
Ooh, goodness. Okay. Because right now there's somebody tuning in that believes they don't have a second chance. Like you said, there's numerous organizations that you have listed that talk about the second chance, that talk about, rebirthing yourself in society, right? But for someone like, there has to be a mental shift, and I feel like I do that work as a therapist all the time, is helping people get to a place where they're making that shift every day. So because I know, like, that happened 35 years ago, but I want you to kind of give me, like, if we were watching a movie and we saw that movie and we saw you doing the work, what would that work look like? Is that like somebody speaking to you? Is that the pastor praying over you? Like, what does that work look like for you to be where you are?
The work is multifaceted. There's different layers to that work. Yeah. But the main work is inside of me. It's meeting people right where they at. Meet them where they at. Yeah. Whatever they need. If a person needs a pair of shoes, if they need underwear, if they need a brassiere, if they need a hug, they need me to pray for them. They need me to buy them a candy bar. Give them a ride down the street. I was going, when I was running for office, I would pick people up, take them to the grocery store in between me running for campaign and oppose. And God saw the realness of the work that I do. Just restoring hope. I'll tell people that you need a second chance, third chance, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. The people that I work with every day give people multiple chances. That's what God wants us to do. It's 10,000 times 10,000. And there's no end and no limit to God's love. And so I'm just trying to be a vessel to do God's work. And I think, or I know that God has chosen me to take it to higher levels.
Right. So your passion comes from you knowing what it feels like.
My passion comes from me knowing that I deserve everything that I deserve. Right. Because everything belongs to God anyway, and nothing belongs to us here on this earth. So if I could just have an opportunity to leave a legacy of work, of service, not things, but the impact, the value on somebody's life.
Right.
That's what I would like to do.
And let's talk a little bit about your organization, Beauty Behind Bars.
Beauty After the Bars?
Beauty After the Bars.
That's okay.
So
you want to say that again?
Yeah, let me say that again. Beauty, let's talk a little bit about your organization, Beauty After the Bars. So tell us about that work. Like, where was that work birthed? You know, was it, I always like to hear how God gave it to you.
Inside the prison cells. I would cry every single day.
Wow.
I was pregnant. I was rubbing my stomach. You know, I got into a fight in prison. I got kicked in my stomach. And I just knew that there had to be something when I leave prison. And so I was just thinking, I was like, you know what, there's going to be some beauty after the bars.
Wow.
Didn't really know the magnitude, the curriculum, because in the 90s, my mindset is not what it is 35 years later. Fast forward, you know, I also was a cheerleader at John C. Smith University.
Wow.
I was on the cheerleading team at John C. Smith University. And today, I'm at John C. Smith University. This is my last semester.
Wow.
You know, I take semesters off because I'm running. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, but you know, this is my last semester. I start school on August the 20th, and so I am a senior, and I intend to move forward and graduate. But you know, Beauty After the Bars started inside the prison cell. Now, the birthing of that happened inside of the prison cell because I miss my daughter so much. You know, Antoinette, you know, my 33-year-old was 2 years old. And of course, Tiawana was in my stomach. They're 2 years apart. So now they're 31 and 33. But it started inside the cells. But when I came home and met my tribe, I met my tribe somewhere around 2012, 2013, 14, 15 really kicked off. And we were talking about what we were going to do. And I've been with those women and men. So the National Council for Incarcerated Women and Men, we've added boys and men, I mean women and girls. So the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls, we've now also added men and boys because it's an understatement to say who has been infected by incarceration. Mass incarceration infects the entire world, and 1 in 3 people go back within 6 months of their time, and I'm one of those products.
Wow. So is that what areas does that work entail? Is that Charlotte?
So I have a national footprint, but my organization foundation is in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I have a national footprint for the social justice work. When I say national, recently I just came back from Trinidad in the prison speaking to women about this work and the work that we do and talking at a national conference in Trinidad. So it's really a national footprint.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So that's a beautiful. So I think about, you know, like I said, of course, reading your bio, right? You said you are at John C. Smith. That's one thing. Then you also work for American Airlines. You also are running for re-election. So with all of that, what does your day-to-day look like, and what keeps you grounded? So keeping me grounded is knowing that, you know, there are so many people that need to have hope restored and to be elevated mentally. You know, we deal with people that are dealing with mental challenges, enforced trauma, PTSD. I have it myself. You know, sometimes I drive down the street and I could just cry with everything that I've came through and everything that I'm going through, thinking about incarceration, thinking about the day that I gave birth to my daughter inside the walls of incarceration, thinking about my mom having to tear me and my daughter apart, thinking about squatting and coughing and spreading your butt cheeks, your buttocks, and saying, even when you're pregnant at 6 months and you're barely touching the floor and the guards don't have any sympathy for you because you have to go through the process. And so what keeps me grounded is knowing that, you know, it could be me, it was me. And so that person that's just looking for that hope, that person that's looking to be restored. And so, you know, I am a forensic peer support specialist for CDH. And that's a behavior organization that has deal basically with people that are unhoused, unsheltered, offering services, all types of services, to life documents, to transportation, to getting them employment, workforce development, the mental part of it, the mental aspect, nurturing their mindset, getting them, even though they may not believe in themselves, letting them know there's a second opportunity and we're going to give you that second opportunity, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and not just talk about it, but actually implement yourself in their path and make sure that they actually get
what they need.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so what keeps me grounded is it's a lot of different things. You know, being raised by a phenomenal single black woman who's still here. You know, I just lost my grandmother 2 years ago. So recently we had 6 generations. Wow. That's grounded. We have 5 generations now. So just being able to, you know, being born to a phenomenal black woman, you know, having that woman that worked from 14 all the way up to 65, worked her fingers down to the bone, where she made her own clothes and just so much stuff. You know, my daughters, being an example for them, wanting to keep them out of the justice system, not wanting them to be impacted by justice. It's hard. You know, there is a stereotype out there that, you know, once you've been in the system, your children go in the system, and it's a revolving door. So we try to break the status quo and change the narrative by being an example of what it should be. Not what it could be or what it should be. A lot of people don't think we belong. But we belong. And belong right where you are. Okay, so my next question is thinking about that. Like, you're doing all of these different tasks, right? Do you have like a day where you just say, okay, I'm not doing anything today, like Sundays, or what's your day, or go have fun with friends? I would be dishonest and be doing a disservice on camera and on record if I say I took the time to say that I'm not going to do anything for anybody. That's not in my blood, but I got that from my mother. So this work was handed down, like I said, the birth canal. My mom was a giver. My mom was in fast food, worked on the 1500 block of West Boulevard. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken. And she was one of the area managers. And when they got ready to throw away the food, my mom would feed everybody on West Boulevard at any time. Good food going to waste, my mom never did that. So my mom fed the whole block every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and especially on Sunday on God's work. So on the Sabbath day, you know, we're supposed to rest. I go to church. I joined, I rededicated my life back to Christ. I've been in church all my life. I rededicated my life back to Christ last September, so September the 24th, saying that I'm going to move forward, be intentional, going to armor classes, putting my armor on, going to Bible study, being a part of the youth team, and just trying to figure out what I want to do. I enjoy life every day. At any moment I can say I want to, you know, what I want to do. If I want to go out of town, I want to get on the boat, if I want to line dance with my family. My family, we do take 2 family trips a year. I travel all the time, every chance I get. In this work, I'm often called to travel because it's a national footprint in all 50 states and all over the world. So I need to do better. There's always something we need to do.
When do you rest?
Self-care. I get some rest. I get a lot of rest, to be honest. But when you are doing this work, you're doing what you love. It's not work. It's your passion.
Purpose,
it's your purpose, and you're filled. You know, you're filled.
And
so you sometimes you're hungry, you don't even eat. You be like, I didn't eat anything at all. God fed me. The Spirit fed me. And that's real. So, you know, I don't have to go and write down the time. Self-care. Self-care is traveling. Self-care is dancing, spending time with my family. Going to church. Seeing my daughters alive, seeing my mother still being here at the age 70, my sister who's my best friend, who's in Maryland, and just, you know, my family and my tribe, my people, the people that I do this work with every day. You know, that's my niche. That's what keep me going.
I love it, love it. So I think about also you being the people's champ, right? And running again for re-election, that fire, that passion, that, you know, wanting to do the work so that people can really get what they need in the city of Charlotte. So let's talk a little bit about what the future looks like.
I'm very confident and humble. I know that I have done the work for the people, by the people, right? And so I'm not worried about who's running against me. I'm worried about my race, connecting to the constituents that put me in the seat unanimously. I made history, first being the first formerly incarcerated person to sit at the dais and win city council in the 14th largest city in the United States of America. And also just being that voice to echo what people want to hear. They have their own voice. They speak, but I'm just echoing their voice in the seat that they put me in. What it looks like, there's 4 people running against me. So my race will have 5 people in it. Now, just remember last year, the seat, 2 years ago, we have 2-year terms.
Okay.
So 2 years ago, the seat was vacant. I say to anybody that's running against me and want my seat, why didn't you run 2 years ago? The seat was open. Now you got to run against a phenomenal, strong black woman that's rooted in the people's work. It's going to be hard to unseat me. It's going to be hard to unseat me.
Drop the mic right there. That's it. Listen. So what would you tell a young woman that maybe, you know, not even thinking about incarceration, but just trying to find her way, right? Trying to find her way in this world, being a black woman, trying to find her way when maybe she's done some things. We know we've all done things that we're not proud of, and maybe it's not publicized, you know, it's not on the hot ticket. But what, you know, you let things just, I mean, it feels like you've been through it all, right? So it's like you allow things to just roll off of you. Just simply, but maybe there's someone out there that doesn't know how to do that. Can you give them the first step?
I hope that in looking at this video that any young woman, first of all, I offer myself up to any young woman that would have me to mentor them and to hold their hand right where they are, to meet them where they're at. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to have the designer clothes. It's okay. It's never okay for somebody to hit you.
Right.
It's never okay for you to be in a situation where your back is against the wall and you don't think that you have any help. I would tell a young woman that think that she is lost just to think about my life and everything that I've been through, to restore hope in that young woman and let her know that the sky is not even the limit. It's only a view of where she could be or where she can get to. And so I would, you know, people saying the sky is the limit. No, the sky is a view, because there's something beyond the sky. And I want you little black women looking at me, restoring hope, hearing me speak, knowing that that view of the sky is what they should aim for. That way, if they fall, they still will be hanging among the clouds, and they can always go back up. You're gonna fall down in life. You're gonna have obstacles. You're gonna fall down. The problem is if you stay down. You never stay down. You get back up and you keep going. I've fallen over and over and over and over again. And I've gotten back up, and I take one step and put the other step in front of each other. And now what we have to know is that we have 10 fingerprints here. That's our blueprint. No one has your fingerprints. And the reason why I know that, they are unique. They are specific to you. You were designed by God himself, the master. And that's why your fingerprints does not match any other fingerprint in this world. You are unique. You have what you need to excel, exceedingly and in abundance. So to be great, to be great. That little girl that's watching, you can and you will. You can and you will. Take the first step. Do the work. Okay, so thinking about all the things you've been through, what would the older Tiawana say to the younger Tiawana? It's simple. You know, it's really simple. I don't want to erase my life because I've been so impactful and God had already designed my life. So I have to be very intentional and very careful about how I answer what would the older Tiawana say to the younger Tiawana today. You have everything that you need. You were designed by the master himself, and that's God. However, in this day, I would say to you, it is not about making a dollar. It's about making a difference. You can go after the work, be who you are, make a difference, meet people where they are, dream big, dream large. As I stated before, the sky is just a view. Don't chase money. The money will find you. All right. Woo! Okay. So we're getting ready to wrap it up. We'll conclude the last segment. So when you're reelected, what would that look like for you? What will the work look like? Because you're already doing the work, but what will the future work look like? So the work will continue for airport workers, SEIU, you know, fighting for all the airport workers, the ones that push the wheelchairs, the ones that clean the airplanes, the ones that walk around and clean the bathrooms and make sure that you have a beautiful place to reside when you go into the #1 economic driver in the city of Charlotte, our airport. They upkeep our airport, and I am the champ of SEIU to make sure that our young people, that the crime, that we do something about them, that we can create and expand plan programs for our youth, that we can open up parks and recs and do Friday night disco so they're not on the street. Put something in their hands so they're not picking up guns and killing each other. And of course, affordable housing. We can talk about that. There's some blueprints that need to be unveiled. There's some seats that need to be filled. You know, what we need to do is we need to change some of the trajectory of the people that are sitting in the seat. And so I look for new colleagues, people that have like-minded, that have voices like mine. And so I want to do the work. I will continue to do the work. I will continue to fight for livable wages for the people at the airport that cannot even afford to live in a home. Some of them are unsheltered. They're living in garages. They can't feed their children, and they're working 2 and 3 jobs, but they are dedicated and committed to the airport. So I will be a part of CASE. I will be a part of SEIU and fighting and leading that charge. We took it to a tie vote, and the mayor had to break it, and unfortunately she did not move in the favor in which she should, which was the people's. So I tell you right now that I will still be standing tall for the people when they reelect me.
All right. This is Candace Moffitt, and we're concluding the interview with Councilwoman Dr. Tiawana Brown, District 3, the Charlotte City Council, one and only People's Champ.